What's up guys, it's Chris here. Now, if you think about it, investing really only comes down to one single thing. Just one thing that separates all of us from being your average everyday investor now to being the Warren Buffett of the future who at times has been the richest man on earth. And that single simple thing is stock selection. Knowing how to value shares and being able to know the difference between a good stock and a bad stock can literally make the difference between being an average investor 10 years from now or meeting our objective of building incredible wealth for yourself and the people you love. There is no single skill in investing that is more important. So that's why in today's episode, we will answer the question that is asked the most, which is how do you value stocks? And we'll go into the main methods in a simple and easy to understand way. And I promise that by the end of this video, you will leave with more knowledge and as a more experienced investor than you are right now at this very second watching this, and with more tools than ever to build your wealth. So let's get started. Now, it's crazy to think that Warren Buffett became the richest man on the planet by just knowing one simple skill. That's it, just one thing that he knew how to do changed his life from being probably another average person living his day-to-day life to being the icon that the world knows and amassing more wealth at the time than any person in history. And I often find myself thinking that if I was able to have that same skill and use that skill, and even if I only made just 1% of what Buffett has been able to make in his lifetime, then I would still be sitting on a wealth of 23 billion rand. And look, even just 1 billion to start with would also be fine. I can even show you a story of my own when 10 years ago I bought shares in both Tiger Brands and Naspers. And if I had held on to both of those shares, then today Tiger Brands would be down by 5.6%, while Naspers would be up by a whopping 560%. That is the difference between being able to pick a good stock and a bad stock, and the compound effect of making the right decisions over the long term can clearly have a huge difference. That's why on this channel we take you through as much of the best information, skills, news, tips and tricks as we can so that everyone who watches Casual Cash can be the very best investor they can possibly be. So if you enjoy that information, please quickly go and click the like button, and if you're new, you're welcome to subscribe for more. So let's get into it. Today we're going to go through the foundation of stock valuation, and that is a method called fundamental analysis. You might have heard of it before because it is the quickest, easiest, and most widely used way to determine whether a stock is overpriced, underpriced, or fairly valued, allowing us to make more informed choices in our investments. So these right here are the 5 steps of fundamental analysis in order to value your stocks. Step 1, earnings per share or EPS. EPS is a company's net profit divided by the number of shares it has. So simply put, it shows how much money a company makes in profit for every share that it has or each share that you own. Let's make it simple. If a company makes 100 Rand in profit and there are 10 shares on the market, then the earnings per share will be 10. So 10 Rand profit for every 10 shares. Easy. But don't worry, you don't have to sit and calculate this. You can find all of these numbers we're going to talk about very easily on Google Finance. Just search for the company that you are looking for and you will find them all on the top or further below on the page. This here is where you will find the earnings per share. So the higher the EPS, technically the higher the value of the share should be. So when you compare this to other shares, the higher the EPS, the better the profitability of the share. But it does need to be used with some of these other metrics as well. Step 2, the PE ratio or price to earnings ratio. This is one of the most important metrics that I use very often because this ratio measures the current share price relative to its earnings per share. It's calculated by taking the share price and dividing it by the EPS that we spoke of earlier. So why is this important? Because it is the easiest way to see if a share appears to be overvalued or undervalued. And that's pretty important, I think. A higher PE ratio means you are paying more per share for the amount of income the company is making and is usually based on the popularity or forward-looking price of the share by the market. For example, Tesla is actually not a big company and doesn't make as much money as the bigger car makers, but because it is so hyped up in the stock market, its share price is very high. So the price to earnings ratio of Ford, for example, is at 12, which is low. but the PE ratio for Tesla, which is technically overvalued for its earnings, is at a high 77. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad investment, but it means that it is more expensive per share when compared to what the company makes, and a higher PE ratio is an indicator that a share could be overvalued. So it's always important to use this to compare against other competitors before buying your shares. And again, you can find this easily on Google Finance. Step 3, the PB ratio or price to book ratio. The price to book ratio compares the market valuation of a company to its book value. What does that mean? Well, a book value basically means the net assets of a company. So if it's a property company, it would be the value of its buildings minus its debts. So if the company owns one building for 100 million rand and the debt on it is 40 million rand, then the book value or net asset value would be 60 million rand. So it's what the company owns versus what it is worth on the market. The market value of a company is the share price times the number of shares it has. So usually the market value is more than the book value, but if it is less, it might be an indicator that the company is undervalued and possibly a good buy. So a PB ratio of 1 means the market value is exactly the same as the book value. Anything over 1 means the market value on the JSE is higher than its net assets. But a PB ratio of less than 1 is often a good sign for value investors because it means if the company liquidated and sold all of its assets, it would still come to more than the market value. So in theory, it would be a good bargain. And you can find this number under the balance sheet section in Google Finance right here. Step 4, dividend yield. Now, we've been through this one a few times, and it's quite simple. This ratio shows the percentage of dividends that the share pays on an annual basis compared to its share price. And this percentage does keep changing day to day as the share price changes. Because if a company pays 5 Rand a year and today the share price is 100 Rand, then it is paying a 5% dividend yield. But if tomorrow the share price drops to 50 Rand, then that same 5 Rand is now a 10% dividend yield. That's why when markets go down, typically dividend yields go up and vice versa. So whatever the percentage is when you buy it, is the percentage of dividends you will get a year, at least at the time of buying. This is not important for everyone or every share because not all will pay dividends. But if you're interested in passive income, then this is an indicator to look for before buying, and it also contributes to the total return you will receive from the share. Basically, your share price growth plus your dividend yield is your total return. But as with all of these indicators we have spoken about, it is very important to say that none of these steps should be taken and used in isolation, and you should always do a thorough process of research from a number of different factors before you invest. Just because a company has a high dividend yield, it doesn't automatically mean it's a good investment, or just because a company has a low PE ratio, it doesn't always mean it is going to grow at a better rate than a company with a high PE ratio. And the same goes for the PB ratio or the earnings per share. All these metrics are incredibly important and give us great insight into different aspects of the company, but make sure that you are looking at the full picture and all of the macro and micro aspects that will affect the company before making your decision. And that brings us to our last metric that we look at to value shares, and that is step 5, behavioral factors. Now, this last step is here to remind us that as much as we can dive into numbers and ratios, there are certain aspects of a company and its future that numbers cannot tell us. Let's use Sasol for example. This company went from difficult times and after a massive restructuring went on to grow by 1,400% over about 2 years. Now, this wasn't just because of good management, but rather the war in Ukraine, which boosted energy prices around the world, and no amount of numbers on Sasol's balance sheet could have predicted that. But similarly, over the last year, the share price has dropped by over 40% because of various factors like oil prices going down, inflation figures, and decreased demand from China. So again, these numbers we've discussed are important, but we also need to zoom out and consider world factors in our decisions. But the second part of behavioral factors is a little something called human nature, and I'm talking about emotion, news, and market sentiment. So now, why does Tesla have a price to earnings ratio of 77 when its much larger competitors are at around 12? Well, because the company is cool, and some people think it's the next Apple, and whether you like him or don't, an Elon Musk company has an appeal. So the shares are in high demand, and as a result, their market value is much higher than their book value. But it also means that when something negative happens and he releases a silly tweet or X, the share can drop and crash just as quickly. It's also why when things are good, markets can be valued high above their worth, and when markets crash, people panic sell and prices go well below their value. And that is of course why many investors choose to invest and make huge profits. Like they say, riches are made in recessions. So when you are evaluating a stock and whether it is a good fit for your portfolio, make sure to use step 5 as a final check before you invest. Are you making this investment because everyone else is, or because of FOMO, or the fear of missing out? Or is it possible that in the future a public change in sentiment could affect your share price, and are you okay to live with that? I remember for a long time people were buying Tungela resources because of fear of missing out, and a lot of people made good money on them for a while, and then they dropped over 57% this year. So before you buy, make sure that all of your fundamental analysis markers align, make sure the numbers are looking good for you, and then check that you are investing for the right reasons and not based on emotion. And then you should be in a good position to be making successful investments for your portfolio, and over the long term be able to grow significant wealth for yourself and to improve your life. And guys, that is it for today's video. This can be a complex topic and I tried to keep it simple, but if you have any questions about anything we've spoken about, I'll answer them for you in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, remember to give it a like so more people can see it, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But until then, I'll see you guys next time, as always, on Casual Cash. Cheers.